Welcome to a journey that will challenge everything you thought you knew about existence. This is not just a series of topics, it's a descent into the unsettling, the bizarre, and the deeply personal. Each level on this iceberg chart represents a deeper layer of reality, one that most people avoid confronting. But in this series, we're not just exploring the surface, we're diving headfirst into the depths. Level by level, we'll move from everyday struggles like financial hardship and the concept of belief to the cosmic and existential. You'll face questions that will gnaw at the edges of your mind. What happens after death? Is everything around you real or just a figment of your imagination? By the time we reach the final level, you'll find yourself staring into the void of nihilism, where even the existence of heaven and hell is questioned and reality itself becomes nothing more than a cruel illusion. The deeper you go, the harder it will be to pull yourself back. You'll confront not only your fears, but your very sense of identity. Are you ready to question everything? Because what's waiting for you at the bottom might just change the way you see the world forever. This is not for the faint-hearted. This is the iceberg of unsettling truths. Let's begin. By subscribing to our channel, you play a vital role in keeping our content alive and thriving. Your support makes all the difference. Growing up Christian, Jewish, Islamic. Growing up in a Christian, Jewish, or Islamic household is like being handed a map from birth. A map that shows you where you come from, how the world works, and what your ultimate purpose is. But what happens when the map you're given doesn't match the landscape of the world you live in? These religions teach faith, devotion, and answers to the biggest questions of life and death. But as you grow, cracks begin to appear. You start to question, is everything as clear as you were told? For a child growing up under the weight of these ancient belief systems, the world is divided into light and dark, good and evil, heaven and hell. It's comforting in its certainty, but as you grow older, you may start to wonder, what if those boundaries aren't as solid as they seemed? What if heaven and hell aren't places, but states of mind? What if sin is just a word and not a reality? You begin to question the stories, the rules, the traditions. Why must certain things be feared? Why are some questions never asked, only answered with, "It's the will of God"? And yet, the fear of breaking away is almost paralyzing. Imagine walking into a room full of people who believe wholeheartedly in these teachings, while you start to feel like an outsider, despite knowing all the prayers, attending every ritual, and memorizing every scripture. But deep down, you wonder if God hears you at all, or worse, if he exists at all. The weight of those thoughts, terrifying. You start to see your own family in a different light, a quiet chasm growing between their unwavering faith and your secret doubts. Could you tell them? Would they even understand? Or would it feel like a betrayal? What happens when your personal experiences clash with your faith? When your prayers go unanswered? Or when tragedy strikes and no divine intervention comes? The existential doubt starts to gnaw at the edges of your mind. It's the silence in those moments that's the loudest, isn't it? You start to question not just the existence of a higher power, but your entire upbringing, everything you've been taught to believe. And if that's not true, what is? Does the universe care about us at all? Or is it indifferent? As you continue to grow, one question looms larger than any other. If God is watching, why does he seem so far away? Or is he closer than you think, watching every move, waiting for you to make your choice? Belief or doubt? Faith or reason? You're left with the unsettling realization that the choice, no matter how small it seems, might change everything. But which path do you take? And what happens if you choose wrong? Being atheistic. Growing up in a religious household, whether Christian, Jewish, or Islamic, brings with it a weight of belief systems that can shape your every decision. It molds your mind, tells you what is right, what is wrong, what you should aspire to be. But what happens when that certainty begins to erode? What happens when the belief system you were brought up with starts to feel hollow? Imagine being around 10 or 12 when you first start noticing the cracks in what you were always taught. It begins subtly. Maybe it's a question you ask, and instead of an answer, you're met with silence or worse, a rebuke. Don't question God, they say, but how can you not? The stories you once accepted without hesitation now seem strange, contradictory, or too convenient. A part of you wonders if everyone around you has those same doubts but pretends not to because they're afraid of what they might discover if they pull too hard at those threads. The teachings that once felt comforting now feel restrictive. You're told to live a certain way, dress a certain way, pray at certain times, but does anyone truly know why? Or are they following the rules out of habit, out of fear of what lies beyond if they stop? The rituals, once imbued with deep meaning, now feel like empty gestures. Your mind starts wandering to a terrifying possibility. What if there is no higher power at all? What if everything you were told as a child was just a way to control you, to keep you compliant, to make you fit into a mold? When you hit your teenage years, this gnawing uncertainty grows stronger. Now you're being pulled in two directions. The religious teachings are louder than ever, the expectations greater, the consequences for straying harsher. But the voice of doubt, it's like a shadow in your mind, growing louder, darker, until you can't ignore it. You start reading about science, philosophy, atheism, ideas that are forbidden in your household. You begin to ask yourself questions that once seemed terrifying, but now feel inevitable. What if there is no God, no heaven, no hell? What if the very foundation of your upbringing is based on a lie? And then you feel it, the slow creeping realization that maybe, just maybe, being atheistic is not the rebellious act of defiance it's been made out to be. Maybe it's a freeing truth, something hidden from you your entire life. But is it freedom or is it isolation? Because once you step down this path, you realize there's no easy return. You've untethered yourself from what you once believed, but the alternative is an abyss. The comforting answers of religion are gone, and all you're left with are questions, unanswerable ones. As you move into adulthood, you're left wondering, did you choose this path or did it choose you? Is this clarity or a darker void? Does rejecting the beliefs you grew up with make you free or forever lost? And in that quiet moment, as you sit alone, you can't help but think, what if you're wrong? What if all the things you discarded were true after all? What if the cost of doubt is eternal? But then again, what if they weren't? What if there's nothing at all, just you, the darkness, and an endless silence? Having financial struggles. As you grow older, the complexities of life start to hit you in ways you never imagined. Childhood seems distant now, a time when your needs were met, and money was a concept that floated above your head, never quite settling into view. But now the reality of financial struggles has wrapped its hands around your throat, and suddenly life feels different, heavy. You wake up in the morning, and instead of thinking about your dreams or your future, your mind immediately dives into a pit of numbers, calculations, and deadlines. Rent is due, bills are piling up. And the job that promised stability, it feels more like a noose, tightening with every paycheck that seems to vanish the moment it arrives. Have you ever noticed that? The way money seems to evaporate as soon as it touches your hands. Like sand slipping through your fingers, no matter how tightly you try to grip it. You start to wonder, did people in the past feel like this? Or is it just a modern nightmare where every moment of your life becomes a desperate scramble to survive? You feel it everywhere, in your chest when you see the overdue bills, in your gut when you swipe your card and pray it doesn't decline, in your bones as the stress and anxiety start to wear down on you. But the worst part isn't the immediate fear, it's the long, creeping realization that this might be your life forever. Financial struggles don't just hit you once, they follow you. They latch onto you like a shadow that never leaves, darkening every corner of your existence. And what does it do to you? To your relationships? To your sense of self-worth? Suddenly you're comparing yourself to others, wondering how they can seem so comfortable while you feel like you're drowning. You see the vacations, the new cars, the happy faces. Are they all pretending? Or is it just you trapped in this suffocating cycle? You start to make compromises. Dreams you once had, they begin to feel like luxuries. You adjust your expectations, lower your ambitions, all in the name of survival. The life you once imagined, of freedom, of happiness, of fulfillment, starts to feel like a distant fantasy, something out of reach. And the most terrifying question of all begins to echo in your mind. Is this all there is? It gnaws at you, that fear, that uncertainty. You wonder if the financial system itself is rigged against you, if no matter how hard you try, you're set up to fail. You cut corners, you sacrifice, and still, it never feels like enough. At some point, you might even begin to question, what's the point? Why fight so hard, work so hard, if you're always going to be one step behind? But you keep going. You have to, because stopping, that would mean losing everything. And so you drag yourself forward through the exhaustion, through the despair, through the endless calculations that haunt your mind. And in those quiet moments when no one is around, you can't help but wonder, will it ever get better? Or is this just the way life is, a never-ending struggle to keep your head above water while the weight of the world drags you down? First, experiences with death. There comes a moment in every life when innocence shatters, when the comforting veil of ignorance is torn away, and you're forced to confront something you never truly understood before: death. It's not something you can prepare for, not really. You hear about it growing up, whispered conversations, maybe even solemn moments at a funeral, but it never feels real until it happens, and then suddenly everything changes. The first time you experience death up close, it's like a cold wind cuts through your chest. Maybe it's a grandparent, a family pet, or even someone closer, a friend, someone you never imagined could just stop being there. One day, they're laughing, living, a part of your world. The next, they're gone. But what does that mean? Gone. The word doesn't even make sense. The person, their memories, their laughter, their warmth, it all vanishes, leaving only a hollow, gnawing absence. You start asking questions you never thought to ask before. Where do they go? Is it just nothingness? Is there some afterlife, some continuation of existence that we can't comprehend? Or is death just a void, a black abyss that swallows everything? The people around you will offer answers, but none of them feel satisfying, do they? People tell you they're in a better place, or that they've moved on, but you're left staring into the emptiness, searching for something more concrete, more real. You need to know. For the first time, the concept of mortality becomes personal. It's not just about them, it's about you too. One day that will be you, gone, just like them. You start to see it everywhere, in the aging faces of your parents, in the headlines, in the quiet moments when your mind drifts, and you realize this won't last forever. And that realization, it's terrifying. You lie awake at night, your mind spiraling. What does it feel like? Does it hurt? Will you even know it's happening when it does? Every shadow in your room feels heavier, every heartbeat louder, a reminder that you're alive, right now, but for how long? The clock ticks, and you feel the weight of every passing second. Life is finite, and now you know it. Death isn't just an abstract idea anymore, it's a presence. You start to notice how it hangs over everything. The flowers blooming, knowing they'll wither, the seasons changing, life constantly cycling towards its end. And now that you've experienced it, now that you've seen it, it never leaves you. It's always there, lurking in the corners of your thoughts. Sometimes you can push it away, distract yourself, pretend it's not coming, but deep down, you can't escape it. The scariest part, though, is that no one has the answers. People have theories, beliefs, but no one really knows what happens when we die. What's waiting for us? Is it peace, darkness, something worse? You search for comfort, but all you're left with are more questions that have no answers. And as you go through life, this experience changes you. You learn to live with it, but you're never quite the same. Because once you've come face to face with death, you realize that nothing is permanent. And in that realization, you're left wondering what really matters. And will anything you do in life actually make a difference? Or are we all just drifting toward the inevitable end, powerless to stop it? Having personal struggles. As you grow older, the weight of the world begins to press down in ways you never anticipated. Personal struggles creep in, slowly at first, like shadows stretching across the ground at sunset. But soon enough, those shadows envelop everything, and you find yourself in a place where nothing feels certain anymore. You start to feel off. Maybe it's an overwhelming sadness that hits you out of nowhere, or an anxiety that tightens around your chest every time you think about the future. There's a constant pressure to succeed, to be something, to fulfill expectations, whether they're your own or someone else's. You start wondering if you're enough, if you're doing enough, if you'll ever be enough. And that's when the self-doubt starts to gnaw at you. You look around and everyone else seems to have it all together. Friends, family, even strangers. You convince yourself they're doing better, living happier lives, moving forward while you're stuck in quicksand. But no one knows, do they? They don't see the internal battle raging inside you. They don't hear the voices in your head, the ones that tell you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough to handle what life is throwing your way. Sometimes the struggle isn't even something you can put into words. It's just a weight, a heavy, oppressive weight that sits in your chest, making everything harder. Getting out of bed, facing the day, smiling when people ask if you're okay, it all feels like a monumental effort, but you keep going because that's what you're supposed to do. You hide it, you push it down, and you pretend, but inside, you're unraveling. Then there are the deeper wounds, things you've experienced that no one else knows about. Maybe it's trauma, heartbreak, loss. Those moments that shattered you in ways you never knew you could break. You carry them like invisible scars, trying to hide them, but every so often they flare up, and the pain becomes unbearable. You wonder if anyone will ever truly understand, if anyone could possibly get what you're going through. And even if they did, would it really change anything? The hardest part is feeling like you're alone in it all. Personal struggles can isolate you, make you feel like you're drifting further and further away from the people around you. The world keeps spinning, but you're just stuck. And the silence of it all is deafening. You wonder if it will ever get better. Will these feelings pass? Will you ever find peace? Or are you doomed to carry this weight for the rest of your life? These questions linger, haunting you, leaving you uncertain about the future. You search for answers, but often they remain just out of reach. And so you keep going one step at a time, holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, things will change. But in the back of your mind, the doubts remain. What if they don't? What if this is it? What if the struggle never ends? The uncertainty of it all is enough to drive anyone mad. And yet you continue because that's all you can do. Keep fighting, keep pushing, and hope that one day you'll find the light at the end of the tunnel, if it exists at all.